Sports Gumbo. We are live on YouTube. We are going to start tonight's episode with a question and then we'll dive into the topics. So, what was the biggest SEC sports headline this week and why does it matter? Kevin, we'll get started with you on this one.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go with the overall SEC dominance in baseball. We've talked about it when we've done the previews and talked about baseball a lot. There's no sport that the SEC dominates more than baseball, and it's been that way for 20 plus years, 30 years. Uh, the run in football was great, but baseball it is. 43-5 this weekend in baseball games. Again, just shows the dominance. And you have teams like Auburn that goes to Texas and they beat Louisville and other quality teams. You know, they went 3-0. Arkansas beat Xavier, swept them. Florida beat Missouri State. Now, again, these are not dominant teams. Auburn beat quality teams, but baseball, you know, you can play a mid-range team and lose if a pitcher's having a good day. But 43-5 is dominant. And I just think, you know, Florida, you know, they beat Kennesaw, swept them. The weekend before that, Kennesaw scored 30 runs. So again, when I look at it, I look at teams like Florida and Ole Miss. They're performing better probably than we expected them to early. Both teams undefeated and keep rolling. The only team I would say right now that you know maybe their fans are scratching their head a little bit is Tennessee. They lost a couple of games this weekend, so you know they might be scratching their heads. All that being said, it's 2 weeks into the season. Tennessee's very talented, got a deep pitching staff, and got plenty of guys that were highly recruited that hit the ball well. So I'm not. I wouldn't. If I'm Tennessee, I wouldn't immediately panic. By no means. But to me, they're the only team that coming out of this weekend that would be disappointed. Mississippi State swept. Of course, you know they didn't play a lot of good teams, but again, the overall SEC dominance in baseball is prevalent in there. Oklahoma continue to look good. Just a lot of good performances in baseball, a lot of good players, and we'll talk about them later. Sweet, what's your moment for the week?
So my moment for the week is LSU based. An article came out talking to different SEC GMs about NIL and rosters and stuff, and LSU's $40 million roster, or alleged to have a $40 million roster, which I think is probably true. And my thing is where do we go from here? I mean, how long before it gets to 75 and then 100, and this just isn't sustainable. And I think something like this, it's rumored that the NCAA is going to come out and start doing some things with NIL and with teams who have been violating rules and stuff like that. So we'll see if anything actually happens. But I think we're past the breaking point. So articles like this, I think, will further push the need for regulation and get it moving in the right direction sooner rather than later. DMAC?
Yeah, my biggest headline of the week is 2 cycles hit in baseball this weekend in the SEC, something that has never been done before. Cam Kozel from Arkansas hit for a cycle on Saturday, and on Saturday as well, Aiden Robbins, the center fielder for the Texas Longhorns, hit for a cycle. So this is something that's never happened on the same day in the SEC before, with all the great hitters that have come through the SEC. Never happened before, so huge weekend for the SEC in baseball, but especially with some record setting this weekend. So, little preview of what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to do a little basketball recap. We're going to do our baseball SEC position player rankings along with our player of the week from the weekend. We're also going to talk some NCAA. Has the NCAA grown a pair here recently? And then we're going to talk some hockey. America rules is my takeaway there, but we'll cover that a little bit later on. We're going to dive into some college hoops now, starting with the biggest win of the week, and I'll get things started here. Duke beat Michigan this weekend. It was a 1 versus 3 battle. Cameron Boozer had 18 points in the win. And, Michigan had some bigs. People were worried, how is Cameron Boozer going to, go up against these guys? Well, 18 points, and Duke out rebounded Michigan 41 rebounds to 28 rebounds. Absolutely dominated the glass this weekend. So that is my biggest win of the week. Puts Duke, right now, if the season were to end, a clear number one seed in my mind. Kevin, what is your biggest win of the week in hoops?
So I'm going to stay right there with you in the big game moments of the weekend, and I'm going to go Arizona against Houston. The game was played at Houston. Arizona was without two of its better players, Koa Pete, their best freshman, and they went in there and won by 6. Close, competitive game, and they won a game. Arizona likes to play up tempo, and they won a game that was in the 70s essentially. I would not have predicted that beforehand. Number one, I wouldn't have predicted a game that had a defensive tone to it for Houston to lose. Not that Arizona doesn't play good defense, but Houston's one of the top defenses in the country. Arizona, I guess what I'm saying is Arizona went to Houston and beat Houston in Houston style of game. So that's where I would go with my big win of the weekend. You referenced Duke being the number one seed and probably overall number one seed. I would agree with that. I would also say that the win that Arizona got over Houston puts them back into that top 14 in the country and probably locks up a number one seed with them. When I say locks up, you got to be careful. If you lose 2 or 3 in a row, that could hurt that. But this is the Arizona team that started off the season and undefeated and just had a bad week, I guess is what you would call it, when they lost at Kansas and at home to Texas Tech. Again, 2 teams that are top 15 teams. So Arizona would be my team that proved themselves this weekend, and I think it was a good week for them and Duke. Sweets, what about you?
All right, so my game of the week, a team of the week is BYU's upset of Iowa State in Ames Saturday, 79-69. They did so without star senior Richie Saunders, but freshman do everything, be everything. AJ DeBancha, he led the way with 29 points, 10 boards, and 9 assists. Fantastic outing for him. BYU dominated in the paint. They outscored Iowa State 40-22 in the paint. They dominated them on the boards as well, 39-28 advantage there. We expected a good game. It was one of the games that we covered last week in our previews, and we all thought Iowa State would win the game. But I mean, nobody's surprised that BYU did win with having the best player in the country on your team always helps, and will keep you in any game. So where does this leave Iowa State now? Iowa State was looking to be, a 2 that was battling for a 1. I still think that they can be a solid 2 seed if they handle their business the rest of the way. I think they're just on the outside looking in as far as the 1 seed goes. But BYU could be a team on the rise. They had a heck of a game against Arizona. Before they lost, but it was a hell of a game, and before beating Iowa State. So I think that BYU is a team that could sneak up as possibly a 4 seed and make a little noise in the tournament. Where are we going next, DMAC?
Yeah, I'm going to give my biggest concern team in the SEC right now, and that is the Vanderbilt Commodores. Open the season 16-0 after they beat LSU back early in the season. They were a top 10 team briefly. 16-0. Since that game, they are 5-6 with 6 SEC losses. So they are a team that, at one point was a borderline 2-3 seed, possibly a 4, and they are trending in the wrong direction right now, especially losing 3 of their last 5 games. They're likely going to be anywhere from a 7 to a 10 seed now, which makes that road to the Sweet 16 and Final Four much harder. One thing that they have not been good at in SEC play is winning the close games. They've got a 4-point loss to Florida. They've got a 1-point loss to Oklahoma, a 1-point loss to Missouri, um, a 4-point loss to Tennessee. So if you're the Vanderbilt Commodores, you really want to see your team win a close game here, especially after the impressive start they had at 16-0. They have just completely trended in the wrong direction since game 3 of SEC play, and it has really hurt them here down the stretch. So that is my biggest concern team is how low will they drop in the seeding. Right now, if I had to put money on it, I would put them as a 10 seed when 3 weeks ago they were talked about as a 4 seed. So, Kevin, any thoughts on concerned teams?
Yeah, so I'm going to go Kentucky. They lost 3 games in a row here recently. Some of them were close. Uh, Tough, hard fought game that they led most of the week at Vanderbilt, or excuse me, at Auburn. Lost a 1-point game that they were ahead with 3 with 20 some seconds to go in that game. But they've lost 3 straight. They're 17-10. To me, Kentucky's season has really been about being up and down. They started the season a little rough. Then they got into the SEC and had some comeback wins. They came back and beat LSU at LSU, came back and won it at Tennessee, beat Tennessee on their home court, kind of similar, had to come back and win that game, won a game at Arkansas. So when you talk about some of the games that they've won, you would think, okay, they're in a solid place. But they're 17-10, ninth in the SEC. They've also lost games through the year that you wouldn't think this team would lose. So I think they're on the verge. They're in the tournament. And kind of like you referenced with Vanderbilt, DMAC, I think Kentucky would probably be an 8-9 seed right now. That being said, though, if they were to lose a couple more games, they could quickly find themselves on the bubble and possibly out of this thing. Of course, they could go on a roll and win some games. They have played a tough schedule and, maybe get back to a 6 seed. They're playing on the road at South Carolina tonight. 11 minutes to go in the game. They're up 2. So this is a game that, to me, they got to win. If they were to lose this game, it would put them in a tough spot, I think. So Kentucky's my team. And look, that's a $22 million roster, if I remember correctly. So their fans, I know Pope's frustrated. He was caught on the mic after the game the other night at Auburn, saying some things with his AD after he didn't blame it on the officials, and then he went over there and was caught on the mic blaming it on the officials. So Kentucky's my team that needs to step up and play better. Sweets, what about you?
I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers men's basketball team. Right now, they are 6-8 in the SEC. Nobody would have seen this, I don't think, when the season began. But they've really dropped off. They recently did regain a little momentum. They were on a 5-game losing streak, and they beat Kentucky 75-74, the game that you referenced the other night, Kevin. But they currently sit in 11th place in the SEC. And right now they, depending on which place you look, some people still have them around a 10 seed. Some people have them out of the tournament altogether. I don't think Auburn not making the tournament was on. I don't think it was on any of our 3 bingo cards, but yeah, there's a very real possibility that Auburn is not going to make the tournament this year. DMAC?
That is right.
Yeah, let's Kevin, you got any other games you want to talk about before I dive into some different hoops action?
I don't know about any other games, but like to me, hoops. Sweets mentioned DeBoncha for BYU, and he's had a really good game last week. I want to talk about another freshman, and then just the overall freshman class. Could be the best freshman class in the history of college basketball. And I want to go Darius Acuff, who played all 50 minutes of that game in Alabama the other night, scored 49 points, only had 5 assists, only had 1 turnover. And if you watch the game, he had the ball in his hands probably 50 to 60% of the time for Arkansas. To only have 1 turnover on a road game in an up-tempo game, both teams scored over 100 points, is phenomenal. And 49 points, he had that on like 24 shots. He got a lot of shots at the line. Just an incredibly efficient night. and just a great player. I'm not sure, right now, 1 minute I watched Debancha play, and I think he's the best freshman. Then I watched Acuff the other night, and I'm like, this kid's the best freshman. And you can watch Peterson for Kansas, and he has moments you think he's the best freshman. And then you have Pete at Arizona and Wagler at Illinois, and there's others. Just a great freshman class. And so I just want to mention Acuff. If you get a chance to watch him, you better. If you get a chance to watch Debancha, you should. These are special players.
Where's that takes DMAC?
Yeah, so let's talk SEC hoops. Who do you guys think are title contender teams? And then we'll jump into some pretenders as well. So when Kevin, we'll kind of rapid fire this. When you think SEC, who do you think can go on and win a championship this year?
Florida, and that's it. The only team that I would predict out of this conference right now to win a championship is Florida. Arkansas's got offensive talent, not good enough on defense. Florida's they're the best team. That's the only one I would go with. Sweets, what about you?
Florida's the only legitimate answer in this. I will say though, Kevin, to piggyback off what you said, if Acuff got hot at the right time, they could ride that kid to a title. It's happened before. DMAC?
If they can tighten up their defense, I agree.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Florida is the only team that I see that has a complete enough team to make a run this year. Now, some teams who are kind of highly rated, will say like projected 4 seeds and higher in the SEC that I think are pretenders in this year's March Madness. I'm going the Alabama Crimson Tide. I know they're playing well right now overall, but it would not surprise me to see them as a 4 seed get upset by a 13 seed to open up round one of March Madness. Any pretenders for you guys?
That would have been my call, but I'll pivot and go to Tennessee. Although I like Rick Barnes and what he's doing up there, we hear about them and they get up there where they're near the top 10 and everything, and then come tournament time they just don't get it done. So Tennessee is my pretender. Kevin?
Well, you guys took both of my two, so I'll say that. I totally agree. Let me hit on both those. I totally agree with Alabama.
Let's say you can have mine, and then this is you speaking for me because I don't want to sleep on the couch tonight. Thanks.
Alabama has won some games recently, but they've played games at home. They beat A&M at home in a slugfest, barely squeaked that game out, beat Arkansas at home. So to your point, DMAC, I think you put them on a neutral quarter on the road. Alabama's very susceptible to a loss. And in the NCAA tournament, you got to be good defensively, and I just don't think they are. And then Sweets Barnes is a great coach at Tennessee, and where I just don't think this is the talented team. They have some talent, but not a Sweet 16 type team this year. Ament's really good, another freshman that we talked about. So I would have to go there. Let me say, I know we talked about teams that are on the bubble. Let me go to where I would say my most disappointing team. Team that's not, and that would be Ole Miss. Chris Beard's a heck of a coach, and Ole Miss is going to finish the season with a losing record. There's just something wrong with that team, and I just would use them as an example of the portal. The portal can help you, and you can have a great year, but if you're totally dependent on the portal, 1 out of 4 or 5 years, it's just not going to work with the chemistry. And I think that's where he's at with this team right now. I think the chemistry on the team is just bad. They're like 11-16 right now. I think that team could finish on a downward slope. You're hearing things that he may want to go coach somewhere else. So Ole Miss would be my total disappointment team, and I'm going to be interested to see how they finish. If it just goes completely in the tank, because that's kind of where it's at. Where do we want to go next?
So one last basketball question. We've talked about it in football. The SEC, not the powerhouse they used to be in football. was not built for playoff football this season. The SEC had a phenomenal basketball season last year. The Florida Gators won a championship, but is the SEC this year built for March, or are they kind of inflated by non-conference games and everybody kind of beating up on everybody, and some weak teams in the SEC? Your thoughts, Sweets?
I think it's a down year. I don't think that overall talent was there like it was last year. And I mean, Florida winning it last year wasn't. If Florida won it this year, it wouldn't be a huge surprise. It'd still be a surprise though. Last year it wasn't as big a surprise. I just think that there were other teams that were stronger contenders last year. Auburn with Pearl. Oates had them rolling in Tuscaloosa last year. So Tennessee was strong last year. So I just think on the whole, it's a down year for the SEC. Kev?
Yeah, I would agree. Again, I think Golden's a great coach. Maybe at this point the best coach in the SEC, if and one of the top 4 or 5 in the country. But I do. I think it's a down year in the league. I look at the teams we already talked. Florida's the only one. Arkansas has the talent if they will guard. But it's hard. It's hard to turn that. I mean, it's hard to go from a really bad defensive team, and they're one of the worst in the country right now. It's hard to go to turn that on and become a good defensive team. And I just don't see a team being effective in the tournament if you can't play defense. You get into a possession game in the last 5 minutes, and that's kind of what happened in Alabama. You got to be able to get some stops. And you just look down the list of teams. I don't see. I'll be honest. I think Florida's the only team that I would bet money that they would be at least a Sweet 16 team. Every other team in that top 4 or 5, Alabama, Arkansas, maybe Tennessee might get Sweet 16. You look at the rest of them: A&M, Texas, Missouri, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, UGA, that might get in the tournament. Maybe Auburn. I wouldn't put one of those teams in the Sweet 16 if I had to pick a bracket right now. So I would say DMAC is definitely pretenders in hoops this year for the SEC.
Yeah, I agree. Last year, two of the teams in the Final Four were from the SEC. This year, I would take the odds that there are zero SEC teams in the Final Four. And I almost like the odds more of zero SEC teams in the Elite Eight as well. Although I think Florida could get there, I like the odds of no SEC teams. So before we wrap up basketball for the night and move on to baseball, we'll go player of the week. Mine is going to be Cameron Boozer in hoops. His 18 points against Michigan. Knocking off the number one team in the land and holding his own all day while scoring 18 points. Phenomenal freshman. Over to you, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the guy I mentioned just a little minute ago with Darius Akoff. His 49 points against Bama, 1 point short of the school record at Arkansas with 50 as a freshman. So I think, yeah, I mean, you can't, again, 50 minutes and one turnover and you play in the point. I just don't think you can get a better game out of a player than that. So Darius Akoff would be my guy. Sweets?
AJ DeBoncha, 29 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, played all 40 minutes, 7 for 9 from the free throw line, 10 of 17 from the field, did it all. Had a few steals. I think he had 1 block. Just every time they needed him to step up, he was there, be it on offense or defense. He was there on both ends of the court. And I think, for a lot of people, he solidified himself as, probably the top pick in the draft this year.
So this is a note to all upperclassmen in college basketball. Our 3 players of the week were all freshmen. You guys need to step it up. Over to
It's the best freshman class ever.
Yeah, it is. It is really good. That's
Yep.
for sure. So over to some SEC baseball now. We're going to get things started with our rankings between infield, outfield, and pitcher. I am taking the pitchers tonight. Kevin, you are taking the infield, and Sweets, you are taking the outfield. For those of you watching tonight, we're going to rotate this weekly, take a position group we like. So I will get things started with the pitchers. And my pitching staff is heavily based on the performance from 2 starts so far this year. So pitcher number 1 for me is Jake Marciano, the Friday night guy for Auburn. 11 innings pitched, 1 earned run, and 20 punch outs. He is kind of the workhorse for this Auburn pitching staff. My number 2 pitcher is going to be the Friday night guy for Texas, Ruger Riojas. 11 innings pitched, 19 punch outs, and 2 earned runs. And no, guys, I am not just listing my 5 starters in fantasy baseball. At number 3, I've got Colin Fisher from Arkansas. Phenomenal outing this past Sunday. He's at 13 innings pitched, 0 earned runs, and 19 punch outs. And then to wrap up 4 and 5, I'm going a duo from the Oklahoma Sooners at 4, LJ Mercurius. He's got 10 and a third innings pitched, 1 earned run, 19 punch outs. And then Cam Johnson, a guy I saw as a freshman at LSU. He struggled. As a sophomore at Oklahoma, he struggled. Walked more guys than he struck out and more guys than innings pitched through 2 years. But that has changed here in 2026. Through 11 innings pitched, he's given up 2 earned runs and struck out 18 batters this season. So that is my top 5 in the SEC pitching at this moment. Sweets, over to you with the outfield.
Okay, so my top 5. First of all, the SEC is loaded. There's tons of outfield talent there, and there's a lot of there are going to be guys left off that are going to make tens of millions of dollars at the next level. So if I omit somebody, it isn't because I didn't think they were trash. I'm just telling you there is that much talent there here in the SEC. So I'll lead off with LSU's guy Derek Curiel. He was a preseason All-American. One of the top the top rated high school baseball players in the country. Chose to go to LSU instead and bypass the major league draft, and didn't disappoint. Won a national title his freshman year, and is that guy. Number 2 is Caden Sorrell from Texas A&M. He's ranked as a top 20 prospect for the Aggies in the major league draft next year. He's got hits the long ball well, does it all. Great fielder, does everything. Number 3, I'm going with Ace Reese, Mississippi State. He was the last year's SEC Newcomer of the Year. Came over from Houston, I believe it was. He's projected to be a first-round pick as well. Number 18 overall prospect for next year's draft. Fun to watch, full of energy. Love the guy. Number 4, Chris Hakopian, another Texas A&M transfer who came from Maryland. He's ranked 16th prospect in the draft, and he's going to add a lot of power to the Aggie lineup. Last is Mason Braun for LSU. Braun has been pounding the ball this year, and he stepped up, and looking for big things out of him as well. Kev, now we'll go to you.
All right. Well, now you took a couple of my infielders and put them in your outfield. I'm just saying.
Okay.
But it's all good. I understand.
From this list.
I understand they're good players. I'd be wanting them too. So that's all good. So
you can
I'm
have
gonna go.
Back.
Okay, I might have to take an outfielder and slide them in the infield then. Look, they're athletes. They could probably play anywhere, right? So I'm gonna go number 5. I'm gonna go Trey Phelps. He edged out Cam Johnson for the number 5 spot in the infield. Hitting .522, off to a good start. I think he's hit 3 home runs so far. Cam Koziel would be 4, and he probably should be number 2, but he would not be one of my first 5 at the beginning of the season. So I'm going to interject him and I'm going to these top three. I'm kind of putting in there based on their potential. Also, nobody's been better than Koziel early though, and DMAC, you mentioned him hitting for the cycle earlier this weekend. He's really carried the Arkansas offense. Him and Helfrich at catcher, and I probably should, but I didn't put any catchers in this group. I just went strictly infielders. And let me also mention you got Tyler Bell and Chris Rimbert, who might have been part of this, but they're both hurt. Number three, I'm going to go Gavin Grahovic, first baseman for A&M that can also play third base, DH, and probably play in the outfield if he needed to be. Just a lot on his potential. The first weekend he had a big weekend. Was a little bit off this past weekend, but again, I think he's still going to have plenty of good weekends for the Aggies. I'm going to place Ace Reese number 2 at Mississippi State. Definite candidate for Player of the Year. And then my number 1 infielder, who I would put at the Player of the Year right now at this moment, would be Justin LeBron. Great shortstop for Alabama, hits the ball, hits for average, hits home runs. So that would be my top 5, and we'll see where it goes week to week. Cam Johnson from Oklahoma was really close in this, but that would be my top 5.
Nice, pretty solid top 5s. I don't think you can go wrong with any of those 5 guys on any list to be one of your star players. I'm just briefly looking through. I've got 2 Oklahoma pitchers. There's 2 Aggie or 3 Aggies on the list. So a pretty split up list. Seems like the Aggies have a little more star power to balance out maybe a weekend lineup this year. And, with the Oklahoma pitching staff, we will see what happens when they get into SEC play. But so you kind of answered this already, Kevin, but I want us to answer this question. Who is the SEC Player of the Year right now, and who is one guy you think is coming after him for that title? We'll start with you, Sweets.
Ooh, my SEC Player of the Year right now would probably be Justin LeBron. I mean, not to steal your thunder, Kev, but I mean he's that good. Everybody knows he's that good. That's why he's such an obvious choice. To chase him down, I look at Derek Curiel. He's a kid who was been highly thought of for years. Even though he's only a sophomore, he's a name that we've known since he was a freshman in high school. So he would be the one that was coming after him. Kev?
Yeah, so I'll stay back with my infield guys. I would go LeBron, like I referenced, as the Player of the Year. But I'm going to go for a guy to chase him down. Kind of, probably the hottest player in the league right now is Cam Koziel. Our guy at Georgia a couple years ago was a good player, but preseason-wise, he was not considered a Player of the Year, and he ended up, riding it all year. And I think, can Koziel do that? I think that's the question. Right now, I'm gonna hop on his train because he's hitting it. So LeBron 1, Koziel 2, and let's see if Koziel can keep the heat on there. D-Mac, how about you?
Yeah, I'm with you guys at number 1, Justin LeBron, and I am going to dislike myself for saying this, but at number 2, I'm going with a Goop Warrior. Braden Holcomb from Vanderbilt has been playing extremely well. He would be my number 2 guy right now in the
He's been really good.
All right, you got to put money in the jar for saying Goop Warrior on the show.
I know. Man, we may have to do a giveaway to some fans watching us for that comment there. So now, any last minute baseball thoughts before we move over to something else? Kevin?
The only thing I would say last minute on baseball is, again, SEC fans, watch SEC baseball, get involved in it each week. there's a lot of teams. We talked about the SEC being down in basketball. Certainly not the case in baseball. You've got Texas, you've got LSU, Mississippi State, Arkansas. Oklahoma's looks better than they've been. Auburn's pitching was really good. I'll just say right now, you're going to have 4 SEC teams in the College World Series. The only thing is we don't know what 4 they're going to be. So let's all watch it this week and let's just keep watching it week to week and kind of see how the season plays out. Sweet, your thoughts?
Piggyback off what Kevin said, get out there and go see games. I mean, we Kevin and I both live here in Georgia. We're both about an hour and 15 minutes away from Athens, but we could be there that quickly to see, some of these guys are going to be the biggest names in Major League Baseball for the next 15, 20 years. And you can see them for $5, and sit, wherever you want to in the stadium. That's a really neat opportunity. Take advantage of it. DMAC?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of you guys. Go catch some baseball. If you're in the Dallas area this weekend, you've got UCLA playing in Arlington at Globe Life, but you've also got teams like Alabama and Oregon State playing in Frisco. You've got A&M, I think Tennessee and Mississippi State also all playing in Arlington. So, within 45 minutes of you, if you're in that area, you've got 6 to 7 potential Omaha caliber teams playing right in your backyard this weekend. But don't worry, if you can't go watch any live baseball and you cannot watch any baseball on TV, you can tune into us on Sunday and Tuesday, and we'll give you the recap you missed. So moving on, let's talk the NCAA. Is it true? Did the NCAA finally grow a pair and they're going to be the enforcement agency of college athletics that they've needed to be for the last however many years they've let this kind of run amok on them? Kevin, I'll let you kind of get started. I know you've got some awesome data to bring us here, and then we'll move over to Sweets with a little more passion.
So, look, we've been critical of the NCAA, and rightfully so, because for the last 3 to 4 years, it's just been the wild, wild west. There's been no structure. NIL has just went in tons of different directions, and there's been no fight. Eligibility, get it in a courtroom next to the university with a judge that went to school there, all those kind of things. And the NCAA has just sat back and taken it. Here recently, though, they have won about 70% of their cases with eligibility issues this year. So they're fighting back there. And this week they've came out and said 2 things that I think are very interesting, where they've showed absolutely no teeth, or if you want to call it something else, no kahunas, no onions in the past. So I'm gonna put it out there and say what they said, but then I want them to prove it to me and really do what they say they're going to say. So one, in a release by the VP of Enforcement, John Duncan, he announced that the board of directors has been charged with the NCAA to pursue significant penalties for tampering violations. No, look, we all know, I mean, that could go in a lot of places, and there's a lot of people out there tampering. So are they going to do it? They're putting it out there right now, and they've actually issued some examples of tampering cases that they're going to look into. A lot of this may have been prompted by Dabo when he brought the Ole Miss stuff, and he brought it straight to light. So I commend them for taking a stance, and let's just see if they do. The second one that I thought was interesting is they're going on a rule that's about 50 years old, and that is on the eligibility piece. If you use an ineligible player, and again, if you look at Ross Dellinger's Twitter, you can see this stuff. He's always reported this stuff, and he's the closest to it. But if you use an ineligible player, so let's take, for example, Trinidad at Ole Miss was ruled eligible. If the NCAA appeals that and Ole Miss loses that the appeal and Trinidad plays in a couple of games next year, Ole Miss could be susceptible to losing those games based on a 50-year-old NCAA rule. And the NCAA has came out and said they're going to do that. They're going to enforce that. Again, they're basically challenging schools that just want to go get a state attorney and a state judge that's going to give them, a win. And you're seeing other states like Tennessee that ruled against their quarterback, and the judge specifically came out and said, could this happen? Could we lose games if I give this case? And he ruled against, the Tennessee quarterback. So I commend the NCAA for stepping up and acting like they're going to grow a pair. Now, let me also say this. I want to see them do it. They need to fight this because eligibility needs to be cleaned up. Tampering needs to be cleaned up. Sweets, you mentioned NIL and the structure of that. All that needs to be cleaned up. Sweets, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you one thing. When you said that the NCAA said if they ruled somebody ineligible and then a local judge deemed them eligible, that they would make them lose those games. They would forfeit those games for having an ineligible player participate. Did they specifically say that, or so are they saying that, well, since we ruled against Chambliss and his local judge said he could play, if he plays 7 games this year that they win, we're going to go back and say, no, you didn't win because you had an ineligible player. Is that what they said they're going to do specifically?
It sounded like you kind of said the same thing. Help me understand what you're.
No, did they reference anything specifically?
Yeah, they referenced the rule that's 50 years old that they will go back. Now again, they got to prove that they're going to do this, but they referenced the rule that if a team uses ineligible players, then they will go back and they have the right to force losses on those teams. Now again, they left the door open whether they will or not, but they have said that rule is out there and they're willing to impose it. Again, let's see if they will. They've not, in the 4 or 5 years of this NIL stuff, they've not had any teeth. And I'm not saying they are, because at this point, it's the show me state. You're going to have to prove that you're going to do it. Don't just talk that you're going to. Same thing with the tampering. They talked a big game yesterday in this tampering situation. Don't just talk it. There's evidence out there. They don't have to look very far. And, some of our teams, all of the teams that we root for, some of our teams might be affected by this. But again, if you're going to make that threat, because they've let this thing go. I mean, really, it's their fault that eligibility is where it is. It's their fault that tampering is where it is. That being said, it's got to stop somewhere, right? So if they're going to put it out there, it's time for them to step up. I'm just glad that they're finally showing some teeth instead of just saying, the hell with it. We're just going to sit back and watch and do nothing. So I think Dabo speaking out caused some of this. I think other coaches being frustrated and maybe leaning in behind the scenes. The media, look, the Chambliss thing, that judge spoke for over an hour when he gave his ruling. He had an hour intermission, to go weigh his ruling, and then spoke for over an hour and he already had it typed out. You're not telling me he didn't have that already typed out in advance, to speak for something that long. So the NCAA has been made a mockery. So it is time for them to stand up. So they've said they're going to. Let's see if they do.
I mean, I just laugh. They're not going to. They again, what are they going to do? How are they going to do this? Are they going to retroactively do it? Are they going to come back when Ole Miss goes 9-3 next year and say, no, actually you're 0-12 because we said that Chambliss was ineligible, but you got your backwoods judge to go ahead and grant him eligibility. Even though that's what we said is that he wasn't eligible. So you guys are going to lose all those games. I don't see the NCAA doing anything like that. If all they need to do is follow their own rules, if they would just enforce their own rules is the right word. All they need to do is enforce what's on the books now, and none of this would be an issue. There wouldn't you wouldn't be worried about these guys coming back for a sixth and seventh year. Those things wouldn't happen because you have 4 years of eligibility. Okay, you got one medical red shirt. We're done with the COVID kids now. So what else is there? That all they had to do to these JUCO kids who wanted fifth and 6 years is say no. JUCO has always been considered college football. Those are 2 years of eligibility that you played. You have two left. Use them wisely. But they don't even enforce that anymore. We all know tons of JUCO guys that played JUCO for a few years and then maybe did or didn't go on to the NCAA. But do you think those guys would have loved 2 more years after that? Hell yeah, they would have. They'd have loved to be 24-year-old guys playing against 18-year-old kids. So, if they just enforce the rules that are on the books now, they'd be fine. They just need to find it, in their gut to do that. And until they do, I don't think they will. DMAC.
Yeah, you kind of hit it right on with the NCAA has to enforce these issues. If they would have been enforcing them the entire time, coaches, administrations, ADs would not be doing the things they're doing now. And the only way to correct it is to really make an example out of one of these programs. And you can close your eyes, have 122 universities. Close your eyes, throw a dart, and whichever one it hits, you can easily make a big case against them. Everybody does it, but you've got to make an example out of somebody, and everybody else will fall in line at that point. The looming question for me is still, while the NCAA showed like they may have grown a pair this week, have they dropped yet? And are they ready to enforce something? And I still think the answer, I want it to be yes, but I'm still leaning no.
No, and I don't know. I haven't followed every single case, but who have they ruled against that is done now for sure? Because isn't Aguilar? Doesn't he now get to go to some judge in East Knox County who's got a shine still in his backyard and get him to grant him another year eligibility? Isn't that how that
Well,
works?
the Tennessee local court ruled against him, so that's the one that ruled against him already. Now he can appeal it, but it's tough once you're just like Bediako in Alabama. He lost his appeal, and it was in Alabama. Once you lose in your own state, it's going to be tough for someone to overturn that. So I don't think Aguilar has got a shot. Again, the NCAA has won 70% of their cases this year. That being said, you guys are right. Previous years, not only did they make some of these exceptions that opened them up to court cases, and opened this whole thing up, and for lawyers to get involved because you created so many exceptions, you gave attorneys something to argue for. So, but they have done better with the eligibility this year. And again, like you said, DMAC, is it hot air or is it going to be real? Is that air going to burn somebody, or is it just going to fizzle out and go on down? I think those are certainly the questions that we got to see. I'll say this, and I'm like you both. They have to do something. If they don't, where do we go? To me, if they don't do something, you got to replace them.
Well,
that whole group up there in Indianapolis, they got to go. If they
right.
don't do something, they got.
And Nick Saban has came out and said, I don't know that he actually volunteered, but he said that he would certainly be involved in a committee who wanted to sit down and actually fix the problem at its root. And so there are people who are willing to do it. It's just getting the right people involved. However, the NCAA being the money train that it is, that's always going to be the the lead dog in their fight is how does it affect us money wise. So they're just going to go where the money goes, and whether it's right or wrong. And so far, it's been woefully wrong. That's just how they think. They just need to get some adults in the room who want to make the sport, an amateur sport again. Now, I'm not saying not give the kids anything. Don't get it twisted. But these kids shouldn't be 18-year-old millionaires. Worth $10 million and supporting the family. That's just not how it should be.
And they also said on this tampering piece that they released yesterday, it's not just the schools, it's not just the coaches, but if you have improper contact with an agent of a player before that player enters the portal, that would be considering tampering. So, they spoke a big game here. And what we can't see, you mentioned the money. Do they have the courage to do it to a football team that is making a lot of money, or would they go out and suspend or make 4 teams ineligible for the playoffs next year that are potential playoff teams because they tampered? Do they have the courage to do that, or are they going to go find the tennis team from Richmond that tampered with somebody and penalize them and act like they did something? That's what they've done in the past.
That would be
Will
one
they
hell of a lawsuit. That would be one hell of a lawsuit. I mean, if the NCAA came down and the NCAA came to LSU and said, play your season, your victories and everything, but you will not be in a playoff regardless of what your record is. La-di-da. You don't think LSU would fight that, all the way to hell and back? I mean, I would be disappointed if they didn't.
Well, they might, but now if they have the goods on them, I think the NCAA could win that lawsuit. The question is, I just don't think they have the courage to do it. Now, again, they're saying they are. I don't know if they got the courage to do it or not. Well, the goods on this, I don't think it'd be hard to find.
I think they got the goods on dozens of teams.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that if they make an example out of football programs, you've got 4 Power 4 conferences. They'd probably target a school like Arkansas, a team like Syracuse in the ACC, a team like Northwestern in the Big Ten, and maybe like Kansas State out of the Big 12 for football. To try say, well, we punished 4 Power 4 teams. I can tell you right now, those 4 teams are not playing in a playoff next year or probably in the next 10 years.
Unless they get their Cignetti.
Yeah. Which Kansas State may have in Colin Klein.
Ole Miss Ole Miss is one of the historically most penalized teams when it comes to NCAA violations. So the NCAA might post up there again. Ole Miss is traditionally not one of those teams that threatens the playoffs, to be in them. Could the NCAA go after them, now that they are a playoff team? That part would be interesting. They certainly have a history with going after Ole Miss.
So a couple minutes of hockey and then a couple minutes of wrap up. So Team USA won gold, beat Canada. It was a pre-9 a.m. Eastern time game. Over 26 million viewers at peak, an average of 20.7. That is a record for that time frame for a U.S. sporting event or any sport on record being viewed in the U.S. So, few thoughts on the hockey game. I know we talked about it a little bit on Sunday, but now that it has set in for a few days and America took home gold, what are your thoughts, Kevin?
Yeah, it's a great event Sunday. Canada certainly looked so dominant in the second quarter and the beginning of the third period. I keep saying quarter, but it's periods in hockey. Helnick was just awesome in goal, and the U.S. played with a lot of guts. So just a great event. We're going to talk about this for years. It's going to make 4 years from now, we're all going to be watching hockey just like the Miracle on Ice. It's such an exciting thing. There's nothing like Olympics to bring a country together and have an event like this with so many people watched it and saw a win with a team like this. And again, I just commend those guys, the Chuck brothers. In the second period when it wasn't looking good for the U.S. and they're over there telling them we're going to win the game, and just keeping everybody in it and involved, and they pulled it out. So hats off to the coach, hats off to the players, and just how they pulled together and put this team forward. They brought a lot of inspiration, I would say that. Sweet, your thoughts?
Yeah, listen, just unbelievable to watch, and get to witness again after doing it as a 9-year-old 46 years ago. So, just unbelievable. But the future USA hockey, are we going to wait another 46 years to win gold again? I don't think so. I think that the United States has created a development program that is going to get a lot of these kids involved and get them better training at a younger age to make them more competitive, for our future, as a hockey power. So I think that, and Lord knows we've got the athletes to compete with anybody. It's just getting them on the ice. But I think we've got the program to do that now. So I think the future of USA hockey is bright. DMAC.
Yeah, I mean, man, what a day to be an American Sunday, with everything that the hockey team has been through in the last 40 years. To come out with a gold medal this year is truly a major feat, for not only the hockey team but all of America, all of the United States of America. I guess Canada does fall into North America, but great day to be a citizen of the United States here. Kevin, looks like you got something to say.
Yeah, to piggyback off Sweets' points about the future, I did not remember this as a kid. Again, watching the team that won in '80, that team actually, those guys a lot of them were college players. Well, they all were college players. They actually skipped that year of their college season. They actually played 60 games to prepare themselves for the Olympics. I had forgotten that. So to your point, Sweets, I think this team will be much better. The youth and the hockey movement is much better. That team probably only won because there was so much emphasis put on it at that time, and Brooks did such a good job. Truly an anomaly. But other teams, as you've watched them over the years, did not put that many games into it. But definitely think for the future. But I'd forgotten that they had played 60 hockey matches in preparation for the Olympics that in 1980.
So before we wrap up, one final question, quick thoughts. What is one thing to watch for this week in the sports world? Let's go to you first, Sweets.
My thing to watch is SEC baseball. Who's going to improve? Who's not? Again, through 2 weeks, not a lot going on, but there are some people who are in panic mode for their fantasy teams early. So I advise them to relax. It's early, but now is when you'll see some of these guys start to separate themselves, and some of the guys that are off slower starts start to pick it up. So, Kev.
Yeah, I'm gonna go again. It's February. It's playing for the seed in the NCAA basketball tournament. So I think that's you got your midweek basketball games, and this weekend, I think follow basketball closely. Let's see where your teams are going to end up, and maybe next week on Tuesday or something when we do a recap, maybe we start getting into some seeding opportunities with basketball. Maybe take 1 and 2 seeds, and throw out the teams in that. I think that's what we want to watch right now. Kentucky did pull their game out tonight against South Carolina, by the way. So
Yeah, so I'm excited for baseball on a national level and on an SEC level this weekend. The classic over there in Arlington is as star-studded as it can be, minus missing teams like LSU and Texas. You've got UCLA, you've got a handful of SEC teams. I am looking forward to the SEC being just as dominant as they were last weekend. I think 43-5 is another realistic expectation for the SEC this year. And one final thought. Well, I guess a congratulations to our very own Sweets and his lovely wife T for their wedding anniversary later in the week. So shout out to them. T, me and Kevin don't know how you've done it so long.
Sweets, no pressure.
Wait,
Where'd you go there?
Hold
Where'd
on.
you go there?
Hold on. I also too want to congratulate Kevin on his 24th anniversary, which will be tomorrow. And and I mean, I know you have to have thought it too. The hell is Kim thinking hanging out with my story? I mean, I get it too. We have those thoughts. DMAC, when we get married one day after 25 years, we'll all be sitting here and be like, what the hell is she looking at that idiot for 25 years for? It's gonna happen. It's cyclical.
And I guess shout out to my parents. Their anniversary of 32 years is also this Thursday. So that is a wrap for Southern Sports Gumbo tonight. Remember to like, follow, subscribe. Make sure you're following us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, which is now X, and YouTube, which is here. Watch our shorts, and we will keep bringing you content all year long. We'll see you soon.